Good evening. Welcome back to the One Celtic Fans View this evening. We've got on early with a poll this evening. It's an obvious question, really. Can Celtic still win the league? There's been 51 votes already. 80% say yes, 20% are saying no. Quite disappointing that so many people said no. I think that Celtic can still win the league. It's not without the realms of possibility. I mean, can Hearts seriously sustain this to the end of the campaign? Let me just run back some of the. I'm just reading the Callum one, yeah. Let's get a couple of the comments up early on. Where is that one? I'm trying to find. But if no chance for winning the league this season, it's over, says Football is Life. The board caused this, yes, it did that. The AGM needs pass. Of course, we'll win the league. I can't find the comment I was looking for. Anyway, the comment was, write us off at your peril, but why is Callum making statements like this to the fans? Callum McGregor's obviously been asked by the media after the game yesterday, and he said that, look, the two young guys weren't to blame. And I fully back him. The two young guys, although it was mistakes, there are senior players in the squad. I mean, Brendan Rodgers, it goes on to say that Brendan Rodgers hasn't been shy in lamenting the lack of quality that was brought in through the door during the disastrous summer, comparing the Celtic to a Honda Civic. McGregor shot down claims that the fallout has affected the squad amongst the shambolic campaign. Is it a shambolic? That's a bit... In Celtic terms, it is. Listen, to see if Hearts weren't playing as good as they were. Hearts are an anomaly this year. There's something that never usually happens in Scottish football. Someone out with Celtic or the Rangers having an unbeaten start to the season. It's something that's never happened for a long, long time. And I suppose in one sense we should say, yeah, it's good for Scottish football if you're that way of leaning. I mean, I'm all for making a bigger league and everything and doing away with the split. But Aberdeen did it for half a season. Clubs generally don't have the sustenance to be able to carry on an unbeaten run like what Celtic did through the invincible season. I mean, if Hearts were to go invincible, you would have to say fair play to them, but I don't think that Hearts can go through the season. I don't think that but I heard today that Peter Lawler and Brendan Rodgers can't stand each other. That's not new news, Des. That's not new news. That's old news. And the fact that Peter Lawler doesn't have anything to do with the day-to-day running of the business, and he's never in the building on a day-to-day business anymore. But that's old news. I mean, anybody that knows that has spoken to anybody within Celtic knows that there is no love lost between Lawwell and Brendan Rodgers. Peter Lawwell never wanted Brendan Rodgers back at Celtic. So, you know. But anyway, we go back to Callum McGregor's comment about the younger players, and McGregor shot down claims that the fallout has affected the squad to the shambolic start to the campaign, it says. He said, look, being at a club like Celtic, there's always speculation about who is coming in. Even the guys who did well last year. You've got to keep going at Celtic. You know, you can't do well one year and then not do good the next year. When a new guy comes in, the training level goes up, the performance of the team goes up. So I don't necessarily think that's happened this year. There's always a clamour to sign players at the club. It's up to the players to react, and hopefully over time you push each other on and you get to new levels. I actually feel sorry for Callum McGregor. And I don't mean by what he's going through personally. I feel sorry for Callum McGregor that he's now at Celtic at a time where it's probably the weakest squad of players that he's ever played with. It's probably the weakest midfield that he's ever been part of. It's probably the weakest set of wingers that Cal Mac's ever had on the pitch. And you might even say it could be the weakest defence that he's ever had behind him throughout his entire career. And that's saying something. And it's quite sad, actually. Winning the league mathematically, yes. Realistically, unless we have a dramatic improvement, no. Make sure that you do vote in the poll. There has been already 132. Let's jump to 136. So make sure that you vote in the poll, because it's always interesting to get the overall feeling of the fans. Can Celtic still win the league? I think we can. It may take some changes, and I think that we're all now just hoping that we can get through to the next transfer window without too much damage. There is news coming out of Livingston tonight. The fact that a young Celtic player that's at Livingston is out for 10 weeks or so. So that's devastating for him. That's one player that won't be recalled back to Celtic after the video this morning where I said that there is one last throw of the dice that Brendan Rodgers does have, and he can recall some of the players that have been sent out on loan. Interesting to see that Brendan Rodgers, Neil Lennon, who seems to be doing an awful lot of talking about Celtic. Whatever happened in football to managers, there's an unwritten rule in football, and that is that an ex-manager never talks about his old club. But Lennon's fucking giving it this, isn't he? He's giving it all sorts on the telly. And he was saying that Kasper Schmeichel, who the Celtic fans have been used to him picking the ball out of the net, he says it shouldn't be the case. He said that the Kasper Schmeichel, he was defending Kasper Schmeichel, said that he was going ballistic at Dane Murray, Benji Nygren and Arne Engels. Isn't the voice of a keeper the guy that's meant to be at the back of you telling you where to be? And yes, there should have been Neil Lennon slam Celtic for how they allowed Hearts attacker to cut inside and guide the ball into the near corner. Yeah, I'd give Lennon that, but I always thought that there was an unwritten rule that managers weren't too critical of their old teams. Just fucking Neil Lennon. If we end up with fucking Neil Lennon back at Celtic, I tell you, you can just see it. I mean, they'll make. I mean, this is the fear that I've got, is we lose the game next weekend. Brendan Rodgers needs to go 3-5-2 against Falkirk and then play it against the Huns at Hampden because they're going to go 3-5-2. Yep, I said that this morning. Lenny's frustrated like all of us. I admire that passion. I admire the passion, but it's not often that you get. I mean, for instance, when Alex Ferguson left Man United, he never went to the ground and never spoke publicly about the team for years. It was years. And he still doesn't speak publicly about the club. But Neil Lennon does. And that doesn't sit well with me. Because no ex-manager... I mean, that's like fucking Ronnie Dyler coming back and saying that Neil Lennon was pissed for losing the 10. Do you know... It is. I mean, if that's the case, Get Ronnie back, do a bit commentating, and get him to slag off Lenny for losing the 10. Just anyway, it is all about opinions. Falkirk will wins is green for go. Casper is mince. Yeah, I think we all know that. And the EGM is necessary. Don't know how months. Rodgers needs to stop picking his failing favourites. He does. Hitati needs dropped, and Hitati needs dropped big style. Didn't enjoy watching Lennon team up with ball to call out Sutton. That says it all, doesn't it? That's a comment. Lennon, what a disgrace, talking about Celtic fans somehow wrong. Murray needs his balls booties for what he did in their second goal. I think there's a lot of... Murray was the last man standing, really. There was players well before it got to Dane Murray. Do you know, there's players that are older and more experienced than young Murray. Now, young Murray's not a young lad, and you could blame this on Celtic. Celtic should be getting these players in at the age, never mind putting them out on loan at 18, 19, 20-year-old. Get the players in the first team at 18, 19 and 20. And then that's how you find out if they're going to be good enough. So the time that they're 21, 22, do you know, this nonsense that Celtic have about putting a player, having a pathway. There's no fucking pathway at Celtic at the moment. It's a fucking shit show. Let's face it. It's an absolute shit show what's going on from the B team forward. But it is what it is. When you look at the way that we're sending out these younger players to go out on loan to teams that don't have the winning mentality. And this is where we're falling down as a club. We're sending players away from Celtic where they're getting coached on a certain system, they're getting coached on how to play for the first team of Celtic, and then they're getting sent away to a team where you don't have to win every game. And that's not good at that age. It's not good at that age. That's the age that they should be in and around. Listen, if it's good enough for Martin O'Neill to do it, I think there was at one point Martin O'Neill had about 6 or 7 younger players from the youth system in the squad. Brendan Rodgers doesn't like a big squad. He doesn't like a bloated squad. It's fucking too much to deal with. Maybe says more about Brendan Rodgers. You could say that Brendan Rodgers has been more successful than what Martin O'Neill was, but then Martin O'Neill got us to a Europa League Cup final. So Martin O'Neill will always win that hands down, and especially in the eyes of the fans. I think Martin O'Neill will always be a legend. Brendan Rodgers could have been always remembered as a legend, but I think he would have had to have walked away in the summer. I think if Brendan Rodgers had walked away in the summer, I think that a lot of people would have said, do you know what, fair play to him. Fair play to him. I think that a lot of fans would have respected them more. Chilpel says, Murray has made crucial mistakes every time he's played. Exactly, that's what I'm talking about, Chilpel. But putting them out on loan to other teams and all the rest of it, and then coming back to Celtic where it's must win every game, you don't get the chance to grow and learn. And I think that this is coming down to the setup that we've got at Celtic, the B team setup. I just don't think that it's correct for the player. I think if they're going to go out on loan, they need to go out on loan at a younger age. 17, 18. Come back to Celtic at 19 and they're in the first team at 19. This waiting until they're 21, 22, till they're first team ready, it doesn't work. Doesn't work. It's not working. The evidence is there. What Rodgers got against Bernardo, no idea. And he's one of the players that I think should be start. Dunfermline should be pissed off with Lennon. Yes, they should be. Lenny was steaming drunk as usual when he's doing his punditry. Lennon a third time, don't be fucking surprised this board. Could you imagine it? Could you imagine it? Jesus. He moved out the way. Cameron Carter-Vickers moved out the way the game before. Cameron Carter-Vickers went like that. I don't see the outcry for Cameron Carter-Vickers. He's just a young lad. He would have done that so that the ball didn't hit him and deflect, and maybe he would be thinking that the keeper's behind him and he should get a straight shot. The two guys in front of him that were older, that allowed the Hearts midfielder to walk through the midfield. Nobody put in tackles for Celtic. To then blame it on the last man standing, a young defender, it doesn't sit right. And I'm glad that Callum McGregor said that, look, Gary hits it on the head, blaming Murray for the decline of a club. Blaming a young guy that's came through the system, that has done everything in his life to get to this position. And it's not his fault that Celtic are fucking shite just now. That's the best comment. Do you know, fans blaming a young kid. I mean, he's not young. He's early. He's 20 or something, isn't he? But I just think that the way that the youth are being brought in through Celtic these days, it's wrong. I just don't think it doesn't sit well with me. And when you look at the way that players are not progressing at Celtic, you can't. When there's 21, 22, they're not progressing anymore. Look at Tony Ralston. Tony Ralston has not progressed as a player. But everyone fucking loves Tony Ralston because he'll run through a wall. He's the bricky. Fucking yes. Do you know what I mean? But look at the mistakes that Ralston's done over his career. Anyway, our goalkeeper in defence cost 500 grand yesterday. Meanwhile, there's a £6 million defender, Brendan Rodgers, saying himself with plenty of experience sitting on the bench, an international player at that. Chilwell is out with Bernardo. We need a team that knows about playing for the badge. That means bringing in... We're not going to get that. Not for years now. And this is the sad situation that this board has got us in. There are no players coming through the club that are of a standard that Kieran Tierney was at when he came through, that Sean Maloney was at when he came through. You could even say Stephen McManus was at. You could even say John Kennedy was at. Do you know, you could the list goes on. We aren't churning out players the way that we used to of an adequate quality, and they're not getting brought in young enough. It's as simple as that. They're not getting brought in at an age where they can learn to become better players, because you learn with better players that are more experienced and better than you. Going away to Livingston, we've just killed a young guy's Celtic career. I'm sorry. Sending a young guy out to Livingston, he's not coming back to Celtic. His career is fucked, Celtic wise. His football career's not. He'll have a decent football career, but it will not get to the level that he could have possibly got to. And I think that is the big issue with Celtic at the moment. Trying to send whoever sits and think this fucking nonsense up, that once you get to 18, 19, you're in the B team. Once you hit to about 20, we'll send you out on loan for 2 years. It's too late. It's too late then. They're their football talent will have been subdued by lesser managers, lesser teams, lesser mentality of must win every single game, must win every single ball. Having a bad game, it's okay, you can do better the next one. Fucking, you can't come back to Celtic after that. And people will say, well, you've had players like Greg Taylor who come through the system, came from Kilmarnock. I'm talking about players that have came through the system at Celtic that we should be turning into 5, 8, 10, 15, 25, 30 million pound players. Homegrown players that cost us nothing, that come through the system, that become the stars, become the next Sean Maloney's, even better than him, become the next Matt O'Reilly's. But we're not doing that. That's a club-wide issue. Now, Brendan Rodgers says that he's in charge of the whole football department. He has to take some responsibility, as has previous managers. Because let's face it, the manager that we had at Celtic before was not interested in the Celtic youth system. Ange Postecoglou, not interested one bit in any single player that came through Celtic. We need to bring in someone. Where did it go wrong for Brendan Rodgers? When Brendan Rodgers came in the first time, he said, I want the first team playing a system, I want the B team playing a system, I want under 17s playing a system. Everyone's training the exact same way, so there's an easy flow into the first team. That's all gone. It's disappeared. And it will take years. It will take 5 years. I mean, we've built this complex down the road at Barrowfield that's meant to churn out players, but we don't have the players that are in. The B team this year is full of 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds. They're not going to be ready for another 4 years. 3 years. That's way down the line. And then we have to keep on, as they progress, we need to start bringing the rest through. What a shambles this board has got us into. What an absolute shambles. We should have been fucking light years ahead of everyone in Scotland. Not just with our first team, but with the money that we've had, with Lennoxtown, with everything that's been going on at Celtic. We should have been light years ahead when it comes to B team. We're not. We had a load of players come through the B team that were really good and had fantastic potential. But because they didn't see a pathway into the first team, they couldn't see how they could get a first team game. They decided I'm not going to sign a contract with Celtic, and they walked away for nothing. That's down to Celtic. That is all down to Celtic. And that's not down to Brendan Rodgers. That's down to the whole Celtic system. The whole system at Celtic is broken. That's what I think. Why spend 20 million on Barrowfield when we have Lennoxtown? Put the 20 million towards 2 strikers and press top of the league. Monty, you need Lennoxtown's far too far away to expect parents to take their kids. Celtic have always had a big presence in the East End of Glasgow. It's a bit of land that we own. There was no mortgage on it. It was bought and paid for a bit of land. It was a good idea. I thought it was a fantastic idea, but I also thought that it's an idea it could also be used for, rather than training on the pitch at Celtic Park before we go to European away games like Celtic do, they go down to Barrowfield and they train in there. I thought they could have done that with it. It's something that should have been done maybe years ago, but we'll wait and see if it does pay dividends. Because all eyes are now on Celtic. All eyes are now on watching this in case it becomes a big fucking pink elephant. You know, it's just sitting there. It looks good. If that was the case, they should have built the hotel. Lennon think moves on make starts to snows in July. Jesus. If we drop anything to Falkirk and lose to the Hun on Sunday, empty Brendan. If we drop anything, if we drop anything to Falkirk, and definitely if we lose to that lot on Sunday, for me that's the end of Brendan Rodgers. That's too much. To be way behind in the league, to be put out of the Champions League by a team we should have beat. A team we should have beat easily, with the players that we had. System needed change then. System needed changed before that evening. Brendan Rodgers didn't change it. It's all starting to stack up, and it's not looking good for Brendan. It's not looking good for Brendan at all. He can talk about 29 games. Liverpool lost their last 4. Are they worried? I've no idea. I've no idea. But in Scotland, it's a different kettle of fish, because we've created a monster in Celtic. We've created a monster. I'm definitely expecting to lose on Sunday. Danny Rowe ain't a daft coach. He sets up strong, especially in defence. In fact, he set up 3-5-2. Brendan needs sacked. I don't think he needs sacked yet, but it's got all all roads lead to Rome, as they say. And if we stay on the same trajectory, Brendan Rodgers will know that all roads leads to the door slamming shut behind him. Him getting the call up to the office inside Celtic Park. Can we have a meeting today, Brendan? And you know what that, when you get that call, and it won't even, I mean, it'll come from Nicholson's PA. It won't even come from Nicholson himself to Brendan. Brendan will get the call from Nicholson's PA, and it will say, Brendan, you've been summoned to a meeting at Celtic Park at this time today. Brendan will know. Brendan will know what will be happening at that point. He's not daft, you know. It's happened before to him as manager on several occasions. Has Rodgers ever been sacked? Yes. Yeah. Yes, he has been sacked. Brendan will still be manager with 3 points in a cup final. Please keep the faith and stop drinking paint stripper. I'm loving John Paul Murray's enthusiasm, but I'll be honest, it's drained from me. It's drained from me. If we win the league, Celtic favourites for the league in my opinion. Hearts have a big festive period. I can see St Mirren beating them on Wednesday. It would just be like Celtic to drop points on Wednesday as well, though. All roads leads to Roman and the Gloman. And it's not St Patrick's Fenian Band, it's a taxi for Brendan Rodgers. And there'll be no shamrock in his hand. And when the music stops, yes, it'll be... They get me started. Anyway, it was wrong to play 2 youngsters on the right side of the defence. Was it? When it's done and dusted now. You can talk about the rights and wrongs of decisions. I think if Rio Hatate has the game of his life, it's a different game. Rio Hatate was appalling. Do you know, you how many times at Celtic have we had over the years, and there's been young players that have came on, and you could see that they're not as good as the first team players, but you had Scott Brown and you had other players that kept them. You done bringing them on. You never had that at the weekend. You show me one player that was trying to motivate the younger players and try to tell them that we're doing good. There was nobody. Nobody at all. And that's the difference. That's the difference at Celtic right now. That's the massive difference. Is any other time that a younger player has come through the system and comes onto the field to play, you've got older, experienced players egging them on. Telling them they're doing good, keeping their motivation up if a tackle goes in against them. Come on, nobody's doing that at Celtic, and that's what Callum McGregor's getting at. Callum McGregor's saying that, look, the experienced players just aren't there. McGregor admits his team need to wake up fast after they claw back the points between themselves and Hearts, saying that Hearts done well. Hearts, when you look at it, first ball, second ball, in about the box, be direct, feed off the crowd, feed off the energy. These players aren't doing that. They scored at a good time. Cal Mack scored an even better one just 5 minutes later. You've got to remember that their first goal was an own goal. We ripped through them. We ripped through Hearts to score our goal. We're forgetting about everything that good happened in the game at that point. Normally Celtic would collapse at that point and just run out of ideas. But we played some fantastic football to get back in the game at the weekend. We have to beat everyone if we're going to win the league, says Callum McGregor. Yes, we are that good. They're 8 points clear, and now we're the team chasing. If they're the guys at the top, of course we need to try and chase them. McGregor, who scored the goal, was only one of the players that earned pass marks at the weekend. We spoke about that this morning, but it was an afternoon to forget. It says for Dane Murray. I don't think that it was as bad. I mean, he's getting stick. At 22-year-old, I think that he's been left too late to bring through the system at Celtic. I think that years ago when we brought in Norobski and Gustav Lagerbielke, that should have been the year that Dane Murray stepped up. I think we're 2 seasons too late with Dane Murray. That's my opinion. I think that we're 2 seasons too late with Dane Murray to bring him on as a player for the first team. And you make mistakes. You get away with it. You might get away with it when you're out on loan at other teams. You need time to develop, and you need time to get better. You need time to make mistakes. That's what you do at big clubs. When you come through the system, you make mistakes, you go back and you learn and you bounce. Colby and Dano have done really well. They've deserved to go into the team. It's up to us to protect them when they're there. You don't leave people on their own, says Callum. You don't leave people on their own. I've been there as a young player, said Callum. I've made mistakes. You need senior players to have your back and pick you up. And that's what we don't have at Celtic just now. And that's why I feel for Callum McGregor, because he's playing with a bunch of players that just are nowhere near some of the teams that he's played in over the last 10 years. just to say 10 years. I mean, I know he's been there for longer. Callum then went on to say they're exempt in his eyes because it's the older players in the squad that need to grow a set of balls and that need to do what older players do, protect the younger players in the squad and on the pitch. And some people say, well, they shouldn't be on the pitch if they need protected. That's football. It's the way it's always happened, and it's the way it always will happen. Anyway, I need 2 votes to shut down the poll tonight. Will Celtic still win the league? 79% say yes, 21% say no. There's been over 248 votes with over 900 people on the live in half an hour. It's not too bad this time of night on a Monday night. It's always quiet on a Monday night. If we can get the 2 votes in, we'll close the poll down for the evening. It was a good point in the game, but if the manager played with 2 left footers, fullbacks, youngsters, blah blah blah. Just reading the comments, and we're not going to get the votes, are we? Just finish the poll, but anyway, let's jump into some comments and get some comments before we end off this evening. We're on for 36 games. We've lost 2 games. It's not beyond recovery. If Brendan can get a tune out of these fiddles, I don't think it's fiddles that he's got. I think it's I don't know. Jota looked off the boil prior to his injury. Jota was kind of just getting back to fitness. All the manager's doing is trying to look after himself. Interesting that. Carmack is 100% right. The team needs to grow balls. Yep, I think so. Casper, CCV, Alistair Johnson, KT, Callum, even Forrest. Ain't these players the go-to players the last few seasons? Well, Kieran Tierney hasn't because he's not been there. Alistair Johnson's out injured. James Forrest was out injured for the majority of last season. Anyway, February then 2 months. 30 million of his own signings sat on the bench earlier in the season. Engels, Bernardo, Trusty, Adam Ida. Would you trust him with any more money? Going to be an interesting week. Tomorrow we talk about the Falkirk game because Brendan Rodgers should be back out to the media tomorrow. It'll be interesting to see what he says. It'll be interesting to see if this man, Daizen Maeda, will be anywhere near Celtic, or is that dodgy back going to stay until Rodgers is sacked, and then all of a sudden, fucking back's alright. It's amazing that, isn't it? The painkillers worked. On that note, have an absolutely fantastic evening, Celtic fans, wherever you are, all around the world.